Great Britain has unveiled a plan to phase out smoking for younger generations. This plan would involve raising the legal age to purchase cigarettes by 1 year every year. So, for example, if you're 14 years old and the legal age is 18, by the time you're 15, the legal age will be 19. When you're 16, it'll be 20, so on and so forth. Meaning that eventually the legal age will always be 4 years older than you are for your entire life. British officials believe that this will greatly reduce the amount of young people who start smoking and improve the health and quality of life for them for the future. Now, I have mixed feelings about this, and in a rare cowardly move, I'm going to toss it to you guys first and get your opinion. And let's go to you, Blair. What do you think about this?
Okay. I actually have pretty strong feelings about this. I lived in England, but I'm not from the UK. You know, I don't fully understand their government system. I don't know what the current legal age is for them to drink, to smoke, to join the military. But I would say, just given through humanity's history, banning things doesn't really work. And if we're going to talk about banning one thing, we need to talk about banning other things. Mountain Dew is unhealthy if you chug it all day. Are we going to ban Mountain Dew so people can't make their own choices? I think a consumption tax might be a better route. So it's kind of like a small punishment for like unhealthy choices, but you're still able to have the freedom to choose and your own bodily autonomy, which is a really big issue. So you start banning certain products, then you're kind of taking away people's choice, people's freedoms, people's bodily autonomy. On the flip side, obviously, I'm a mom of four. My kids range from 4 to 17. I want my kids to be healthy, right? I don't want them to pick up a vape pen, or a pack of smokes and become addicted at an early age and things of that nature. But I just think there's better ways to do it. And we can look to things in our own country that we ban, and it usually creates a black market. It makes it more dangerous. People still do it, and then it puts people. Or what are we going to put kids in jail for picking up a vape pen? What are the punishments going to be if they get their hands on it? So I think there's a lot of questions. I ultimately just think it's the wrong path to go down.
Desmond?
Um, well, there's two different ways of looking at this. There is the one side here, because this is actually something that came from an article in Reuters where they were talking about how smoking costs Britain's health services 17 billion pounds a year. It would consult on restriction, and they're going to, get rid of flavors and descriptions and vapes and all kinds of stuff here. But that's really the angle they're taking from this. Is like, hey, we have universal health care, and the damages from smoking are costing the taxpayers of everyone. So this is actually a drag on everyone, since we're all pooling our funds together for this universal health care. So I understand that side of the discussion, but also, full transparency here, I was a smoker for 13 years before I quit. And while I know how dangerous cigarettes are, hence quitting, and while I don't think it's a good thing, I started as a kid, I I have a really hard time with a government coming in and telling you what you can and cannot do with your body, like full stop. When news actually the UK would be the second country to put this into force, if they go through with this. New Zealand did this about a year ago. And when they
Mhm.
did that, very much came out against it on, online on Instagram. It's in my mind, just at the end of the day, when it comes to what decisions that you do that affect you specifically, that just affect no one else, a government should never have any say over that. I understand the kind of like the counter argument with the universal healthcare model, but in my mind, your bodily autonomy should always be left to you and never to the government.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, because I think there's a lot of different ways you could look at it, right? So if we're talking about the financial piece of it, and Desmond, you're saying it would save the UK money that right now they're spending a ton to care for folks that are experiencing the side effects of smoking, right? But if you think about, and I don't know if this is true for the UK, but for the US, it's like some of the most poor and deprived folks have the highest rates of smoking. And so if we were to move towards some sort of ban or more restrictions, it's gonna eliminate that financial burden for them potentially. You could say on the flip side, they're gonna turn to doing something else. I don't know. Um, I think, we've tried to eliminate the third party impacts that smoking can have, right? So you're talking about like it only affects you. Well, before, like when you were in a bar or restaurant, people could smoke and they could smoke around you in public places. And now, you largely can't do that sort of thing. So I think that helps care for that piece. But I also think about, from a media and communication perspective, the concept of choice and autonomous choice in general, in terms of, um, we have regulation on how cigarettes are advertised today. We didn't always, but they're still glorified in other ways in popular media. Obviously, vaping was a big thing because it was almost like they were being marketed to kids with the flavors, but also, again, you'd see their use in popular media, right? So it's like all of these factors influence whether you choose to do that, and then you're addicted, and then it becomes even less of a choice. Um, for me, ultimately, I feel like the possible detriment to folks' liberty, not that smoking is like a protected right or anything, but I think it has potential more serious impacts down the line. To Blair's earlier point, if you ban this or highly restrict it, then what's next? And like, we just started getting access to legal marijuana in some places, or medical marijuana. Well, smoking anything that's burning isn't good for your lungs.
Mhm.
So are we just going to reverse on that now too? Like, I don't
Hmm.
know. It would be too hard to deal with the consequences, I think, or not too hard, too complex to deal with the consequences of that and how it impacts all other things, that I think we have to, rely on folks to be smart enough to maybe wade through some of the media stuff, to prioritize their health. And, we rely on them to be smart enough to vote for folks. I don't know how good it's going, but so like ultimately we need to have them be able to exercise that freedom, I think.
Yeah, it's like that old expression, the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter, kind of like something like that. It's just but so I would be all right with this if the age thing capped out somewhere. But keeping it
Mm,
going indefinitely, that seems kind of crazy to me. I don't understand. And Desmond, you didn't steal my point, but I have something written down here. Most smokers I know started smoking at like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
When did you start smoking?
11.
11. Yeah, so they every
Yeah.
Wow.
like
Yeah.
almost every smoker I've met starts in middle school.
Yeah.
And Blair, you can probably attest to this. Like the only except like I don't know anyone who started smoking at 22. It just doesn't, and then except people who are in the military, because when you deploy, a lot of people
Yes.
chew or smoke cigarettes to calm their nerves. Those are the only examples I know of people who started smoking later on in life. I never smoked myself personally. I tried smoking for the first time when I was 20, maybe 21 or so. And I did it because a friend of mine had started smoking. She said she started when she was 13. I was like, TJ, but 13-year-old girl can do this. You can definitely do it. I coughed and cried like a it was so embarrassing. It was the worst. I was like, how do people get addicted to this? I don't know. But to Kiki's point, that you do have to just trust people at some time, like you do. And my one thing I thought of when I was reading this is that when I was in China for a little while. uh there was no age limit to buy alcohol. And I remember, like, I'd
Hmm.
be at a store and there would be 10-year-olds that would walk in like on an errand for their mom or something, buying bottles of wine and just leaving the store with it. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. And so yeah, I mean, it can be done, but I do see, because we do have limitations on, like, what you're like what you can put in your food. Like, it's illegal to sell
Hmm.
food in some ways. And so yeah, it is a weird one, but I would prefer it capping out somewhere rather than saying indefinitely. Eventually, no one's going to be able to buy cigarettes. Not that I give a shit about cigarettes, but we're all becoming like Milton Friedman here. It's really weird. We're all just going to the libertarian route, but yeah.
I think that's the complicated thing with some of these subjects. Like, not everything is really so black and white, right? When it
Mhm.
comes to this in particular, I know that there was a distinct difference between when I was smoking as a kid in Pennsylvania and then when I moved out here to Montana. And the difference was that, like, in Montana, if you had possession of tobacco like under the age of 18, that was like a citable offense, like similar to like a DUI. Actually, in
Mhm.
Pennsylvania, there was no law like that when I was growing up. Any kid, like the law was like you can't buy cigarettes for minors, but there was no law saying that minors couldn't have cigarettes. So you would see 12-year-olds walking down the street smoking cigarettes, and there was nothing a cop
Mhm.
could do about it. Like, and I think the prevalency of cigarette smoking when I moved out here was way lower than it was when I was growing up in Pennsylvania. So I think there are things that you can do if you're truly interested in, making sure that younger people aren't smoking. I actually believe, strangely enough, as many things as I have nasty to say about President Trump, the fact that the age of smoking was raised from 18 to 21 under his administration, one of the things he did that I liked. I think that was the right thing to do. As a former smoker, I think it was the right thing to do. Instances like moves like that make sense to me, but
Mhm.
like you were saying, there has to be a line. No, there has to be a line. Like the government overreach of that, saying like, we know better than you what you need for your body. Like, I would allow that in certain things like pesticides or carcinogens in our food and in our makeup, or
Pasteurizing your milk or something like
exactly, like,
that.
like if you want to ban that, sure, but like I think with certain things you just have to just allow people, like, give people the information and allow them to make a choice. Do you want to
Mhm.
make this choice, yes or no? Here's all the information you need. Now if you want to go harm yourself, like, by all means go do what you want to do. And it's a little hypocritical because, as you were saying in the beginning, Blair, if you look at some of the food we consume, it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'd have to be banning a lot of things if you really wanted to go that authoritarian route of like, we're going to ban everything that's bad for you. It's just like, where does that stop? Because I mean, how many things are actually good for us?
Yeah, right. That's super valid point. And TJ, we have so much in common.
I know.
I
I
joined
was
the
when you said that
military.
you were evangelical, like, man, we got a lot of similarities
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I was raised in a pretty, I would say, Republican household, Roman Catholic, went to private Catholic school, and then I joined the military. I tried smoking cigarettes, but I was probably 2021 the first time I picked up a cigarette, and it was for a social aspect. It's because when I was going out with all my military friends and like whatever everybody else smokes, so I was like kind of like being left out. I was like, I hated it though. I still don't smoke to this day. So I think there's a social aspect too, but when we're talking about bad for health, drinking is a social thing that people do all the time that's bad for health. It's a leading cause of death, diabetes, being unhealthy. And so it is. Where is that limit for trying to encourage people and incentivize people to make healthy choices is a better route than saying, I know what's better for you and mandating it from a government standpoint. But to Desmond's point about the tax burden of like healthcare, and specifically in their country, thinking about it here, if we had a universal healthcare system and it was being like really burdened because of smoke related health issues, I still think you could put a consumption tax on that and then just make sure that money funnels to the healthcare system to cover that
Right.
deficit. So smokers are kind of the ones paying and having the burden of covering that aspect of healthcare. And on the flip side, you could say, hey, look, you're a consenting adult, and if you smoke cigarettes and we know about it, kind of like health insurance works now, right? Maybe you void some of those healthcare things and then you're punishing people, which to Kiki's point is usually people already in poverty, already in lower levels of economic resources. Now you're punishing them even further. So it's never black and white. It's kind of a funny way to say it, but only Sith lords deal in absolutes. Most things require a lot of nuance, and I think we should just weigh it all out. And I still think it's just the wrong move to make for them. We'll see what happens.